All right, 5:13. We're a little bit late getting to our distinguished guest, Alexis Cuban, now Clemson sports reporter for the state newspaper, former Baylor graduate, or always will be a Baylor graduate, intern of ours at the radio station, and man, we have watched her soar into what she does now, covering big-time college football. Alexis, good afternoon. How you been?
Hey guys, I'm good. How are y'all?
We're doing. Oh, we got the Zoom of her.
Yeah.
Ah, even better. Even better. Alexis, is this Clemson-Georgia game kind of maybe blowing up before it even starts because of Georgia's injuries that appear that they have a lot of people missing? Has that been much talk from the Clemson side?
So it's actually funny. We talked about that. We had availability today, and defensive coordinator Brett Venables was kind of asking someone, like, did they put out a depth chart? Like, how do y'all know that? I'm like, well, it's been reported that, these guys are getting injured. But yeah, it's interesting. So I have a story coming out tomorrow morning about kind of recounting the last time these two teams have played when they had the home and home series in 2013, 2014. The year that Clemson won at home in 2013, Georgia had an injury on the second play. Todd Gurley had just scored a touchdown, and one of the wide receivers tore his ACL celebrating it. And then in 2014, there was one of Clemson's tight ends got injured, broke a bone in his leg during warmups. And, obviously Georgia ended up winning that game. So it seems like the team without injuries is the winner when it comes to those things. Now, of course, this is a neutral site, but yeah, it does seem to, it's kind of cliche, but it does seem that, the winner tends to be the team without injuries. And right now it's just not looking so great when it comes to Georgia and staying healthy, which is ironic because as Georgia is kind of getting guys out, Clemson is getting guys in. Obviously, like Justin Ross, someone who was out the whole 2020 season, they get him back. Justin Foster, who was also out with COVID last year, they got him back. Joseph Ngata has been struggling with the hamstring deal during fall camp. They've got him back. And then Tyson Pumachan, the backup quarterback, who ruptures Achilles during spring football, is back, which is crazy because that's a 10 to 12 month recovery, and he's back in 4. So it just seems like the injury scales are really tipping on Georgia's side, unfortunately.
The big questions for a lot of people with Clemson, obviously they don't really rebuild, they just kind of reload. Now, we got to see a lot of DJ Uiagalelei last year, but what about running back? They lose Travis Etienne. Do they feel confident with who they have stepping in to replace him?
So that's been a point of conversation, all fall. We just asked about that today. They still will not name an official starter at running back, but just because of what Travis did, being the all-time leading rusher in the ACC, it's going to be almost a committee deal. But they do have a lot of talent at the position. It's just not, with the exception of senior Lynn-J. Dixon, it's not exactly proven talent per se, although offensive coordinator Tony Elliott, he's really high on Kobe Pace, a sophomore who came in and had some time last season behind Travis and did relatively well. He held his own as a reserve, but then there's also the freshman Will Shipley who's come in, and he didn't have a fall season at all in high school, but he's come in and really made a name for himself with his work ethic. He is debatably one of the fastest on the team, which says a lot for an 18-year-old kid to come in and have that kind of title, or at least be in the conversation with these other guys who have been here for some of them 6 years. So it'll be really interesting to see who they run out first. Of course, Dabo always kind of favors the older guys. And so that would obviously be Lynn-J, but I have a hard time. I would be very surprised if Lynn-J was the only one or got the majority of the reps in that Georgia game, just because of how high, Will Shipley's on the radar, how high Kobe Pace is respected among the coaching staff. But yeah, I don't think we're going to see a true starting running back for a little bit, just because they kind of want to, it's still an audition essentially, which is crazy to think that, considering this is a top 5 matchup. But I don't think anybody has really kind of stood out yet as far as that goes. But when it comes to the starter, my money is on Lynn-J just because he's a senior, and that tends to be what Dabo goes toward.
Alexis, so when it comes to Uiagalelei, there we go.
It's a mouthful, Uiagalelei. Yeah.
Uiagalelei. When it comes to him taking over for Trevor Lawrence, I mean, obviously he's not brand new. He had some time already, but just what has it been like? I know you don't have a lot to compare it to, but post Trevor Lawrence life, I know there's a lot of confidence in this young man. But what's just been sort of the buzz this camp?
It's been a ton of buzz. It's weird because it almost feels like he's not really like new. Like, yeah, he was around last year, but you don't get the same feel as, oh, this guy's taking over.
Right.
Just because he just feels like such a veteran already as a sophomore. One of the things I heard, I talked to Eric McLean, who is a former Clemson offensive lineman and now works for the ACC network and has a podcast. And he said Dabo came on there and said between DJ, Trevor, Deshaun, Kelly Bryant, and Trevor Lawrence, that DJ has the most arm talent out of all of them, which is insane when you think about the fact that like a couple of them are Heisman finalists. Taj Boyd at one point was in the conversation for the Heisman, and it's big. But this kid, I mean, he just has a natural talent. I think that's the biggest thing is that he's got the body structure, 6'5", 249. So Dabo jokes because he dropped below 250. He's not big Cinco anymore. He's little Cinco until he gets that 5 back in there.
Yeah.
But it's just he's a big kid. He's strong. You saw, I think it was during their spring game, like he had thrown an interception, but would end up like tackling a guy and bringing him down. So that's not a problem. But yeah, it's just insane to think about how good he can be, and just his arm talent, and then also just the wide receivers that he has around him. He complimented them today. So it's definitely going to be a fun offense to watch, I think. And just the fact that, yes, Trevor Lawrence is gone, but I don't see any drop off with DJ. I think just when you consider that he came from a school like St. John Bosco too, where, it's almost like a D1 factory out there in Southern California. So, I'm excited to see what he can do and put together. But I don't see this offense dropping off at all.
Has anything even been more than just the initial when Texas and Oklahoma announced, or the story broke that they would be leaving for the SEC at some point? I'm sure that was on the radar in Clemson, South Carolina, and around the ACC. Has there been much talk about that since?
Not a ton. So someone asked Dabo about it, and he was just like, I don't think anything about it at all, which, of course, that he's going to say that just because, right now it doesn't directly affect them. But I will say they have the alliance now with the ACC and the Big Ten and the Pac-12. So that almost feels like they did it in response to the SEC. There were rumors a few weeks ago that it was, I think, Clemson and Florida State were going to join the SEC, which doesn't really make sense because I don't think their contract's up to like 2036. So that's not going to happen. But yeah, it definitely is something I think a lot of them have keeping their eye on. Brett Venables commented on it, being a former Big 12 guy, playing at Kansas State. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing I think we're all keeping our eye on, because you figure at some point the SEC is going to come knocking for Clemson just because of what they've been able to do.
Alexis Cubitt, the state newspaper with us, covers Clemson on Sikkim 365 Radio. I just looked at this. Do you know how many games Clemson's played in the last handful of years? Normally, in the day, you could play 12 games. You'd have an 11-game season, then it went to 12, then you might get 13, right? Right?
Yeah.
They have played 15, 14. 6 of the last, 8 or 9 years, they've played 13 or 14 games, 15 games. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of games, which also allows you to have a lot more experience. But I would think that, we're getting closer to an NFL type of year. That's part of the super expanded playoff as well. That's a ton of games. That's like a high school team, as Alexis, you covered it in Texas, going deep every year and guys getting a chance to practice, or a bowl team. How much of an advantage do you think that's been for them? As Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess, in terms of like records and stuff, it's cool because you have a guy like James Skalski who's playing for a record 6th ACC championship this year. So he gets to say that, he's probably like the winningest college football player ever, just because not only are they playing, like you said, 12, 14, 15 games a year, but he's been here for 6 years.
Yeah.
So, in that aspect, it's kind of cool. But also, in the same respect, that's why Dabo's against, or part of the reason why he said he's against the expanded, college football playoff deal, just because, you make it 12 teams. Now that extends their season even longer, especially with the way that injuries just really affected them last year. That could happen at any time. So you figure if they're already getting kind of beat up in that span of games, you add, 2 or 3 more, will they even have a team by the end of the season? So I could see why he would fight or be against, an expanded football playoffs and, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a lot of games, and it definitely is a testament to their strength and conditioning programs, just keeping them in for so long. But I mean, in the same respect, when you play, no disrespect to like Wake Forest or like Georgia Tech, but when you play them and you're up by like 40 at halftime, you really don't have to play your starters. So that gives them a little bit of rest. So I guess there's a little bit of,
give and take on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They played 15 games a year for 5 consecutive years.
Yeah. Alexis, you moved from Lubbock to Clemson. What are the biggest differences, West Texas to South Carolina for you?
oh my gosh, I have a social life, guys.
Congratulations.
I have things to do here. No, I will say this. Comparatively, everybody in the South is very friendly and very nice. But it is a different feel here just because, we had in West Texas or in the Lubbock area where I was, we had 1 6A. And so, you might get a kid that would go to kind of an FCS program. But now coming here, it's like 5 stars everywhere, 4 stars everywhere. You're getting like the #1 player in the country, you're getting #1 player in the state. So it's interesting to see how the overall vibe and culture of football kind of changes when you're dealing with these, highly touted programs like we have, Clemson has 3 players from IMG Academy that committed from the class of 2022, versus it was, I think we had 2 players in Lubbock from the same high school that were going on D1 programs, in Kobe McKenzie going to Oklahoma, and then Kyler Jordan, who you guys have talked to, going to Baylor there. So it's just really interesting. It's all football, but just the dynamic of it and the vibe around it kind of changes when you get up to a program like Clemson and the kind of kids they attract, versus being in a West Texas or, that kind of thing. So yeah, just really interesting.
Yeah, you probably don't feel like you're out on an island anymore, right? Because I lived in Lubbock, and I know that feeling of nothing's close within 2 hours. So I'm sure that's got to be pretty nice as well. But Alexis, I did want to tell you, it was now it's been several years, but you used to tag along with me in my old junker of a car. I have a nicer car now. I wish you would have been able to ride in this one, but we used to go to Midway games. We'd drive up there together because you were interning with us, and to see a few years later, where you are now, being, moving around a little bit, but now covering the top, arguably, #1 or #2 program in the country. It's awesome. I speak for all of us. We're so happy and so proud and so excited for you.
Thank you, guys. No, and I told Paul earlier, y'all can totally take credit for me because if it wasn't for y'all, I would not have been where I am and got the experience I did. And yes, Craig, I do remember that your car wasn't terrible. I've seen.
Well, listen, you probably didn't have any, near-death experiences with Craig, although there was one with Smokey.
Oh, my God.
Oh, she remembers.
So to be fair, Smokey, I do not blame you. I blame JJ for getting the wrong call.
Yeah, no, exactly right. When we were on our way back, was it Midlothian or whatever?
Midlothian, yeah.
Baylor's playing Texas Tech, right? We're listening to the game on the radio, and I start weaving out of traffic, and Baylor kicks a field goal, and we're partying inside the car. Paul, were you
a little nervous?
I think if you went back and looked, the oh crap handle had the indentation of my fingers. And you remember Planes, Trains, and Automobiles where Steve Martin pulls his fingers out of the thing? That was about what it was like.
I just let Alexis know what it was like to have fun, right? I mean, just enjoy it, right?
Yeah, the adrenaline, yeah.
Oh, it was adrenaline. Hey, we're proud of you, as Craig mentioned. No question. Good for you with what you're doing and where you've been and where you are now. Congratulations, Alexis Cuba. Have fun covering Clemson. That's big-time football, no question about it.
Thank you guys so much. I love you guys.
The state newspaper, Clemson football, Alexis Cuba. She was an intern. She then moved up north, and was it Minnesota?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Lubbock.
Yeah.
And then, God, they're just so proud of her.
Alexis and I fought snow and to go to lunch in Minneapolis. There's ice and snow. I was very proud of her for living there.
Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. She was there the day after you left. You just missed her by a day. Also, Alexis's mother still sends me a text on my birthday every year.
Oh, wow.
Because Alexis and I have the same birthday. So it's
there you go. All right.
I was going to give her super credit, but then I'd take a little bit of it away. But that's awesome that she does that. Yeah, Alexis is a sweetheart and very proud of her. She's definitely scaling up the mountain and going higher and higher as the years go by. So that's been really cool to see.
All right, when we come back, 5:29, we'll have Paul's top 5 around the corner. We'll get back to some of your feedback on the text line, also on the chat room, and also a couple of other notes that I've saved for the week from the weekend for today as well.
And I did want to ask her, I just didn't get around to it because Paul kind of asked it in a way, but she's got to be fired up to go watch that game. My God, yeah. I'm fired up to watch it. Clemson and Georgia, I'm sure she'll be there in person, and the crowd will be crazy. And just I know we had football last weekend, but now it really feels like this is, obviously the main course. It's not the appetizer that we got a couple days back. But, man, I'm so ready for it, and what a great game to have highlight the first weekend.
When we come back, more